If this is the first time that you come to this channel, we are here because we are on a journey to the SC-500 certification exam, which is the Microsoft Certified Cloud and AI Security Engineer Associate. And so again, you can look it up. It's Microsoft Learn if you're not familiar with this. But anyway, so we are preparing for this exam, and these are the learning paths. There are 12 learning paths over here, and we are now starting learning path number 4, which is implement security for Azure Storage for the cloud and AI security engineer. When you click on this learning path, then here are the modules that we are going to be covering. The first one is describe Azure Storage Services. The next module is implement security and manage access for Azure Storage. The third is configure network security for Azure Storage. And the last on this learning path is implement Microsoft Defender for storage. Okay, so there are 4 modules. Each of this module, it's going to be one video. And those of you who have been following me, this is a very hands-on class. We just go straight to the labs, but we it's important that you go through this reading. If you're not a reading person, then watching the videos with some help with AI, that should be enough as well. Depends on how you learn. But anyway, so here we are. Describe Azure Storage Services. So a lot of the objectives here. So this module introduces you to a storage in Azure, including things such as different types of storage and how a distributed infrastructure can make you data more resilient. So as you can see, the learning objectives, there's not much uh, hands-on here, but to go over all these concepts, what I'm going to do is that we're going to go through the process of how to create a storage account. And then as we move through this, we will be explaining all these things. The anatomy of an Azure storage account. What better than to actually go in and create a storage account in Azure, and also to look at these different components. So, and that's what we are going to do. The hope is that if you need reading, you come over here, you do the reading, and then you do the hands-on with me. So there's a lot of information here. Azure Storage Account types. You need to select all these things when you create an account. That's why we're gonna go into creating one. A storage account endpoints. Here are the different endpoints for the different storage account. If your account is called my storage account, then the endpoint is going to be my storage account .blob .core .windows.net and so forth. You get the gist, right? Everything is right here. And so that's unit 2. Unit 3, we're going to describe a storage account redundancy. So we're going to see when you create the account, you need to choose a redundancy type, whether it is the local account or an availability zone, zone redundant storage or ZRS. All of these are things that you choose when you create the account, or a geo-redundant storage account, GRS, etc. So we'll learn more about this as we move through the uh, the, the hands-on, right? The lab. Describe these storage services. So again, we saw a little bit what this is about. The consideration for access tiers. And the access tiers are hot, which is optimized for data access frequently, call, and all that stuff. And so we'll come back a little bit, through the guide as we move along. But if you need to migrate data, you have Azure Migrate and Azure Data Box, and uh, so anyway, we are going to touch all those things. But let's go to the Azure portal at portal.azure.com. As we usually, this is where we start. And you can go to search and look for storage accounts. I have already searched for them, so that's why they are here. So let's click on this, and I have um, you know several storage accounts already here. Here you see the object storage, file storage, the block storage, data management, the migration that we were talking about. Storage mover, data box, and all. There's a lot of stuff here, and we're going to get to these things as we move along in this lab. But let's start by creating an account, just to go through the process and see um, what this thing looks like, right? So uh, in the basics, Azure Storage is a Microsoft managed service providing cloud storage that is highly available, secure, durable, scalable, and redundant. Azure Storage includes Azure Blobs, as we saw, which is objects, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, Azure Files, Azure Queues, and Azure Tables. The cost of your storage account depends on the usage and the options that you choose below. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go through this. And if you want to learn more, well, the study guide would be the place, but you could also click on learn more about Azure storage accounts. And so this will bring you um, to this article. You could search for this, create an Azure storage account. And so, but that's what we're going to do here, right? So, first of all, you need to choose a subscription. And this is my subscription here. And then, as always, you need a resource group. You could create a resource group if you wanted to, but I already have one resource group where I'm using all this thing. And you need a name. So let's call it CO ST1, storage account 1. The field can contain all. Okay, yeah. So this has to be, I know that. CO storage 1. It has to be all lowercase, no spaces, and that kind of stuff. And we're gonna go back into the guide, and you'll see what the endpoint would look like depending on the type of storage. Then you need to decide on a region. Choose the Azure region that's right for you and your customers. Not all storage account configurations are available in all regions, etc. But so the region is, well, depends on the account and all the stuff, but normally you want this storage account to be near to where your users are. So if you are in the east and all your stuff it's in the east, well, maybe you want to be in the east. If you are in the west, well, you know and so forth. So the primary service, you need to choose what is it that you are going to use this account for. Is it Azure Blob Storage or Azure Data Lake Storage or Azure Files or other, which is tables and queues. And let's choose, for the sake of this, let's choose just the Azure Blob Storage. And here you need to decide whether you want the standard tier here, which is recommended for most scenarios, general purpose V2 account, or a premium, which is recommended for scenarios that require low latency. And when you choose this, we saw this in the guide, but you can choose a locally redundant storage or LRS, which is the lowest cost option with basic protection against server rack and drive failures. It's recommended for non-critical scenarios, any development or anything, something that it doesn't matter that if it fails, whatever, something happens, you can recover from it. Something that's not critical, right? And then you have the zone redundant storage or ZRS. It's intermediate option with protection against data center level failures, and it's recommended for high um, for high uh, stuff. That's for the premium. But so in these standards, actually a lot more choices here. The premium, there's only two there. But so again, we have the locally redundant storage that we talked about. Here we have also the geo redundant storage or GRS. Those are the two. Then here in this standard, those are the two for the premium. You got the zone redundant storage or ZRS. Um, oh, actually, I'm confused. So for the premium, let's see, you get, oh yeah, the ZRS. Okay. And then for the standard, so you also have the GeoZone Redundant Storage GCRS, which is optimal data protection solution that includes the offerings of both GRS and ZRS, and it's recommended for critical data scenarios. Okay, so those are the choices that that you have over here. All right, so so we're gonna do, for the sake of this, just local redundant storage. And obviously, the price changes when you choose, the performance tiers there. So let's now go into the advanced piece. And so there's a lot of choices here. This are settings which apply to only Azure Blob Storage. So in other words, the the type of storage that you choose determine the options that you see in some of these windows over here. But enable hierarchical namespace. What does that mean? So uh, hierarchical namespace, it's complemented by data lake storage gen 2 endpoint, and it enables files and directory semantics, accelerates big data analytics workloads, and enable access control list or ACL. So that's what it means. So if you want that, and then you choose that. And then there's all the choices that you need to choose if you want to do that. But for example, here, the allow cross tenant replication, if you want to do that. So enable SFTP. You cannot do it here. It's disabled for that, but this will enable the SSH file transfer protocol for your storage account that allows users to access blobs via an SFTP endpoint. Local users need to be created before the SFTP endpoint can be accessed. All right, so that's what that is. So SFTP can only be enabled for hierarchical namespaces accounts. So what that means that if I want this, then I need to have that enabled as well on at the beginning of it. That's what this was about. Okay. Um, allow cross-tenant region. We saw that. So allow object replication to copy blobs to a destination account on a different Microsoft Entra tenant. Not enabling cross-tenant replication will limit object replication within the same Microsoft Entra tenant. So that's what that means. And then we have this access tier that we saw in the guide. Hot, which is optimized for frequently accessed data and everyday usage scenarios. So if you have a blob storage account where you're going to be putting, let's say, movies or videos that people are going to be accessing constantly, then that's what you want, right? Cool is optimized for infrequently accessed data and backup scenarios, and then cold is optimized for rarely accessed data and backup scenarios. So, and as you uh, may imagine, the hottest, the priciest that it is. So hot is, costs more than cold, and cold cost cool, and then cool costs more than cold, and so on and so forth. Then we have the Azure files. So these are settings which apply only to Azure files. And because this is for Azure Blob Storage, then you're not going to see that there. So we'll come back to Azure files, to look at the different settings. But for now, that's what that is. And so enable manage identity for SMB. So what this basically means is that uh, the managed identity enables secure, credential-free access to Azure SMB file shares by allowing authentication through Microsoft Entra ID instead of a storage account keys. And we'll talk more about this, how to Azure storage accounts. The storage keys is one way, but that's um, for security purposes, the weakest security ones, because you have these keys, and then if someone get access to those keys, then they can access those storage account. But so Microsoft recommendation is to use Microsoft Entra, right? And then you protect your identity. But if you have an application or anything that needs to have access that is not human, there's no human interaction, then you use managed keys, and so that those keys are not stored anywhere. And if you need a key, you can use Key Vault. And again, we've talked about this before, and we will discuss more of this as we move along. But anyway, so that's what that would do over there. And require encryption in transit for SMB. So this settings enhances security, enforcing encryption of data in transit. On enabling the setting, connection without encryption will fail, including scenarios using SMB 2.1, SMB 3.0 without encryption, and some flavors of the Linux SMB client. So that's what that's all about. And then require encryption in transit for NFS. And this option enhances security by enforcing encryption of data in transit between the client and NFS share using TLS. On enabling this setting, connection without encryption will fail. And again, all of these, if you want to learn more, you can go to the documentation. We also saw this over here, the enable network file system v3. This will enable network file system protocol for your storage account that allows users to share files across a network. This option must be set during a storage account creation. You cannot do that afterwards. So a lot of information here. And then we go to networking. So if we click on next, so public access is enabled by default. Access your resource from anywhere through a public network. Now, for a security perspective, obviously this is a no if you can afford it. If there's no need to access this from the internet, then you should disable this. And you gotta pay attention to this, because definitely there's going to be several questions in the exam about the settings there. But so again, public network access it says configure what inbound access is enabled through this resources public endpoint. So again, this will allow inbound and outbound access with the options to restrict, select inbound. Yes, of course. I mean, you can create a firewall and you can block IP addresses, but still, it doesn't matter what you do. People have access from the internet, right? That's so. Um, a more secure version is to disable that and have other methods of connecting, which we will discuss later. And another option is to secure by perimeter, which is the most restricted. So this would restrict inbound and outbound access using a network security perimeter. Secure by the perimeter offers, the greater the level of inbound and outbound restriction to secure, blah, 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 etc. We will get into secure by perimeter. We're not going to get into that right now. That would make this things a little bit more complex and long, this video. But anyway, so if you disable that, then that means that you need to have a private endpoint, which again, this would create a private endpoint to allow a private connection to this resource. Additional private endpoint connections can be created within the storage account or private link center. And again, we will talk about private endpoint and private link center. Those things are confusing, but you need to really know that for the exam as well. So let's leave it as the default. And for now, and so public network access scope enabled from all networks. If you have a public video or whatever the case may be in this, if you want this storage account to be for anonymous access because you have stuff on the internet, that's fine. But if not, then you can enable from a specific network. And then here you can create specific IP addresses where you want this to connect from. So you can create a virtual network. I don't have one, but you would create a virtual network and say, hey, I only want this network to connect from here. And again, so there's so many choices, and networking is a complete monster of its own. I mean, eh, when you're working with these things, obviously you need to know a little bit of networking. If not, then you need to involve the network administrator, right? But as a security engineer, it is important to understand the different choices, but if you work in security, very unlikely that you would have to create this account. Somebody would, but it's important to understand what these things mean. And obviously, to pass the certification exam, you need to understand these choices. So we're going to leave this the default, and we're going to go to data protection. Okay. And in data protection, again, this is Azure Blob Storage, and these are settings for recovery, tracking, and access control, which apply to only Azure Blob Storage. So enable point-in-time restore for containers, and what that means is that you can use point-in-time restore to restore one or more containers to an earlier state. Now, remember, the storage account is, well, think about like the drive in a computer, and then inside the drives, well, you can have folders and files and stuff, like you can have containers. So again, you can, if you want to learn more about this, you can go there. Enable soft delete for blobs, and we're going to be talking about all this in other videos, but so I don't want to go deep into all these choices because we are coming back to this. Okay, days to retain for deleted blobs. This is kind of like the recycle bin in your computer. So if you delete a file, a blob from this storage account, the soft delete basically means that you could recover it, within 7 days in this case. After 7 days, if you don't take on other measures, well, that will be gone forever. Just like, in Windows, you have the recycle bin, you delete something, it goes to the recycle bin, and then you can restore it from there. But if you delete it from the recycle bin, with native Windows tools, there's no way to get that file back. Well, there may be, but there are all the ways of, and with third-party tools. We're talking about native tools. But here in the cloud, it's a little bit more. If it's gone, it's gone. So um, anyway, so enable sub-delete for containers. You want to do that. Enable versioning for blobs. If you want to have version, you can do that. Enable blob change feed. Enable version level immutability support. And again, so there's a lot of advanced stuff that we are going to touch base as we move along, when we go to the security aspect of some of these things, right? Anyway, so click on next, and then now we get into security. So, well, all of those things are related to security. But anyway, configure security settings that impact your storage account. Require secure transfer for REST API operations, and definitely you want that. There's a lot of information what that means, but basically meaning that the secure transfer option enhances the security of your storage account by only allowing REST API operation on the storage account by using HTTPS, right? You want that, the 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 transfer of data to be encrypted. Any request using HTTP will be rejected when this setting is enabled. When you are using the Azure File Service, connections without encryption will fail, including scenarios using SMB 2.1, SMB 3.0 without encryption, and some flavors of the Linux SMB client. Because Azure Storage doesn't support HTTPS for custom domain names, this option is not applied when using a custom domain name and so forth. So there's a lot of information that, if you are a storage administrator, then that you need to know about this. Allow enabling anonymous access in individuals, so you can allow anonymous access. So maybe you have a folder that have videos and images that people references from other accounts, and maybe you want to do that. Default to Microsoft Entra authorization in the Azure portal. And what that means is that when this property is enabled, the Azure portal authorizes requests to blobs, files, queues, and tables with Microsoft Entra ID by default. And that's a good thing to have if you can use it. The minimum version of TLS is 1.2, and that's what you want. Enable defend for storage, which there is a chapter about that, defender for storage. When you go to encryption, you have the encryption type is either Microsoft Managed Keys, MMK, or the Customer Managed Keys, CMK. And then when you choose this, there's a lot more stuff that you have to go through that we're not going to do now, because again, this will all right, so we're not going to go through that now. We're going to come back to that. Enable infrastructure encryption. So by default, Azure encrypts the storage account data at rest. Infrastructure encryption adds a second layer of encryption to your storage account data. And all of these are testable. Anything related to encryption and security, it's testable, right? And so the next is about tags. We're not going to be tagging. And then finally, you're going to get to the review and create. All right. Tons of information needed. So creating a storage account, well, yes, you can just go boom, 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 take all the defaults. And then later on, you can change those things. But there is a lot of information that you need with this storage account. And so once a storage account is created, then you can come to storage account, you can open the storage account, and then you can configure, and there's a lot of stuff here that we're going to go through. But I think that that's a very good kind of like rundown. So here we go back into the um, the different pieces that we saw, right? We talked about the anatomy of an Azure storage account, the names, the type of account. We created a blob account. We talked about the redundancy options, the LRS, the ZRS, GRS, and GCRS, RA, GRS, and there's a lot of stuff that it will take time to learn them, but and some of these questions could be very difficult, but it's important that you study and understand, have a basic understanding of what this means, right? Azure Storage account types, again, we have to choose that, and depending, the services, the redundancy, and have understanding when to use what, at least have some idea. We talked a little about endpoints, right? When you create a storage account, you saw depending on the type of account, the endpoint will be different. So if you have data lake gen 2, then it's going to be whatever the account is, my storage account, that DFS, that core, that windows.net. Azure files is going to be whatever the account is, that file, that core, the windows.net. And it's important to understand this because you definitely going to get some questions related to that, especially when we're talking about the endpoints. The Azure storage redundancy, again, the redundancy depends on how many copies you want. The more copies you want, obviously, the more expensive, more money you're gonna pay, right? And here is this. So we got primary region. So let's say that a company have office in the East, in Boston, and they want to be protected by the geo-redundant. They may have another one in the West, in let's say California. So if something were to happen in the entire East and that complete data center were down, then you could have redundant in the West. And a lot of companies do this to protect. So again, some critical things that you really, really need protection, right? So maybe in the primary region in the East, I want to have 3 different copies. So all of these are different data centers in the same region. And then we want to have a complete backup in the West, for example, right? So we can do that, or even read only so that we can switch if the entire I mean, very likely the 3 zones are going to fail. But anyway, so there is a lot of redundancy in the cloud if you are willing to pay for the money. We also talked about the Azure storage services. Again, blobs and files in Azure. You may have to read more about this. If you don't know it, we talked about this in the solutions. We only saw archive is a little bit better. We're gonna see that later on. But when you are creating an account, you have the hot, cool, and cold. We'll talk about more about the archives later on. But those are the choices, and here are the the time that. Um, the frequency in which it can be downs and stuff like that. So Azure files, we saw all that stuff. Um, Identify Azure data migration. We didn't talk a lot about this. We're gonna get more to this later on, but Azure Migrate is a service that helps you migrate from an on-premises environment to the cloud. Azure Migrate functions as a hub to help you manage the assessment and the migration of your on-premise. So if you have a lot of data that you are, and a lot of company are doing this, then that's what. And obviously there is, a lot of tools The Azure Data Box is a physical migration service that helps transfer large amounts of data in a quick, inexpensive, and reliable way. So basically, Microsoft will send you a box, a truck, and whatever. There's different, depending on how much data you have, so that if you have a network, you don't have the bandwidth and it's too much data, you could arrange for this box that comes with networking and everything, the hard drives. They come in, they connect it to your data center, you copy all the data, and then you move it. And once it's there, then you can move it to your tenant. So again, and here are some cases from where you can do that. Uh, and Identify Azure file moving options. So how do you move files? Again, we're going to see more of it. AzCopy, it's a command line utility that you can do to do that. You have a Storage Explorer. We're going to see that, which is you can explore right in Azure, and you have Azure File Sync. Those are three different tools that you can use, and we're going to get to this more, but if you want to do some reading, then that's a place to go. And there is a modular assessment. So if you want to go through this, come to this Microsoft Learn and take care of that. And then finally, this is the things that we'll look at. And with that, we conclude this first module in the let's see in the next module. So we are here, we are on implemented security for Azure Storage. That's the learning path. And we just cover the describe Azure Storage Services. This is who we are. In the next module, the next video, we are going to implement security and manage access for Azure Storage. So we are going to concentrate on how to implement level security and control. So a lot of the stuff that we saw here briefly when we created that account, we're going to see those things in more detail. And with that, we conclude that and hope to see you in this next video in the journey to the SC-500 certification exam. See you then.